name is Junior Wall, and I grew up here in southern West Virginia. Since 2009, I've worked with an organization called Coal River Mountain Watch. Coal River Mountain Watch's mission statement reads, to stop mountaintop removal and help rebuild healthy, sustainable communities. Ever since our inception in 1998, we've been working on the first part of that mission. Anything else would be putting the cart in front of the horse. Before there can be a good future for the people of West Virginia, we have to do away with the destructive coal mining that still goes on to this day here. Not only does the surface mining and blasting that happens here pollute, the air and the water and destroys the land and some of the most beautiful habitat that you've ever seen for various animals and plants, but it also makes the people that live near these operations incredibly ill. And it's imperative that to have happy, healthy communities here in southern West Virginia, you must first shut down the coal mining industry here. Let me explain a little bit about how I became involved with Coal River Mountain Watch. In 2008, I was getting ready to graduate high school. I was 17 years old and quickly learned that in this country, in order to go to college, you have to have money. And my family didn't. I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate high school, let alone have any idea how to go about applying for financial aid or scholarships or anything of that nature. And so I did like many people in my community do, and I went to work for Massey Coal Company. And I worked at the Elk Run coal processing plant. I was general maintenance. Some days wasn't so bad. They would just have me like cutting grass or, teaching me how to weld. That was nice. But some days I'd be wading waist deep in coal slurry in order to, fix, this or that, a motor or a belt line or something. And, some days I'd be hundreds of feet up off the ground on various pieces of scaffolding or, working on a belt line or something like that. And so I knew that if I'd kept working that job, that eventually I was either going to get sick or get hurt. And so I quit working there and did some minimum wage work for a while, and until eventually a friend of my family offered me a position as a security guard on a mountaintop removal site. And I took that job because I figured it was easier than, making milkshakes at Dairy Queen. It didn't take long for me working as a security guard until, I started to feel like that money that was going into my wallet was blood money. Because I lived with the same things that the people that live below this strip mine were going through, my whole life, because I grew up here in the coal fields. And, bad water, dust clouds, polluting your air and making it hard to breathe. Your mountains that you've hunted in your entire life slowly disappearing over time. Places that you knew that, you hunted with your family members, or, went and dug ginseng or found ramps to eat, with your family. Just, you try to go back one day and it's no longer there. A few hundred yards back on the ridge line, it's just a straight cliff, and that extends out into a barren landscape of total destruction. Nothing alive. There's nothing that really lives on these strip mines. But you look along the edges of them, where the mountains are, and it's teeming with life. So that's when I started volunteering with Coal River Mountain Watch. Initially I was writing articles for the newsletter, and I didn't have a laptop computer at the time. I had this old clunky desktop that I'd built when I was in high school, and I used to pack that into the passenger seat of my car and drive it to work with me, and run an extension cord out to the power box on the power pole, and steal their electricity at the coal mine to write out articles for the Coal River Mountain Watch newsletter. And after that, I was hooked. This work I knew was my calling, and I've been engaged in this work ever since then, through all the ups and downs. And I continue to do this work and be a thorn in the side to the coal companies in any way I possibly can. And I suppose that's a good segue to talk more about our actual work at Coal River Mountain Watch. So, we've been involved in everything over the years, from, community organizing efforts to gathering scientific data for lawsuits and providing standing to, lobbying in D.C., to writing countless articles and letters to the editor, to getting arrested doing direct action work and physically shutting these coal mines down and costing these coal companies money in that way. And eventually, our work has shifted more towards watchdog efforts, going out and monitoring these coal mine operations to find things that these coal companies are doing that goes against the scant regulations that are on the book, and then forcing our state regulators to hold these coal companies accountable. And we've actually had a great deal of success in recent years using these tactics. I feel like we've had just as much success monitoring these coal mines as we did, going out and getting arrested doing direct action work, as far as like monetarily what we've been able to cost these coal companies. And which, at the end of the day, to me, that is the most important metric of success, because every penny that we cost these coal companies is another penny that they can't use to blow up the next ridge line and poison the next holler and give the next mama cancer. I think learning about the history of resistance to the coal mines here is vital in today's political climate. You look around the country at all these different, extraction projects, or, data centers or other types of projects that are going into people's backyards that they know isn't any good for them or their communities or their families. And people are organizing to fight back against these things. And it really, makes my heart sing whenever I see a community like that, standing up for themselves and pushing back against these, multi-million or multi-billion dollar corporations that don't care about them or their health. And I think it's important for these communities to, have access to these stories of resistance in places like here in West Virginia, where, solidly for the past 30 some odd years, we've had people in these communities pushing back and fighting back against the powers that be, these companies that act like they own the place, because for the most part they do, as far as the land and the politicians are concerned. They definitely own both of those. Organizing your local community to push back against projects like that are going to harm, the earth and harm the people that live in your communities is one of the most important tactics you can take to, keep you and your community safe against these type of projects. As individuals, we can only do so much, but when we band together and work together and have each other's backs, we can get an awful lot more done. Not only is it important for people in communities where there are, possible, projects that would adversely affect their lives, being proposed or going on, but I think it's important for anybody to learn about the history of resistance here, and to learn about these stories, because the coal that's mined here is one of the largest contributors to climate change, and subsequently the mass extinction event that we're all currently living through. And I think if you're a human being on this planet, you need to be paying attention to that. So here recently, we've had some big wins. We were just involved in a lawsuit where Alpha Natural Resources, one of the largest coal operators in our area, had 5 valley fill permits revoked because of this lawsuit that we were involved in. And in addition to that, Lexington Coal Company, one of the other large operators in our community, has racked up a series of fines that we've been able to cost them over the past few years, and to the tune of roughly about $6 million. And as far as metrics of success are concerned, I'd say that's a pretty good one. The fact that an organization with a shoestring budget like ours can cost this large coal operator over $6 million in fines, that's amazing. And that shows you what a group of dedicated people, even with little or no resources, can accomplish when they're determined. And I would just like to make it clear as well that, in my opinion, the economics of this situation don't matter one single bit when you're talking about people's air and people's water and the fact that people are getting sick and dying. And for what? For the benefit and the profit of a handful of people that live out of state somewhere in some subdivision, so that some CEO can park a Ferrari in his driveway. You tell me how that evens out, how that makes sense, how it's worth it, to give entire communities cancer, to make people sick and kill them off, so that somebody can live a lavish lifestyle. To me, that is the ultimate form of evil. And I'd just like to also say, in the words of the late Judy Bonds, there ain't no jobs on a dead planet.